Okay, for those of you who are watching on YouTube as well as Facebook Live at Lillian's radio show, know that today's class is all about migraines. Well, actually, a little about migraines and a lot about balance. We're going to talk about balance in the body as well because Dr. Neal Barnard is in the classroom. So fasten your seatbelts, share and like and invite, because we are going to learn together. So here we go. Our mics are going to get muted. Here we go. It's time to dance.
The Lillian McDermott Show.
We love, we fear, bridges we burn, we make mistakes, then we live and learn. When life gets tough, and it seems like your best ain't good enough. If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here, waiting for you.
This is the place you can always turn to when you need a friend. The Lillian McDermott Show. To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening and viewing friends. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful, best day ever. And for those of you who have been tuning in to the Lillian McDermott radio show / classroom since 2011, or maybe tuned in yesterday for the first time, maybe you saw the watch party or were invited, welcome back. But if this is the first time that you have tuned in to the classroom, please know we've been waiting for you. This is a safe place where you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my listening, as well as my viewing friends, teachers' pets, like I like to call you guys, on Facebook Live at Lillian's radio show, that you will embrace this new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now today, and every day, I guess we ask the question, what am I willing to do to achieve health? What am I willing to do to achieve balance in my life? And of course, you know that I quote the great philosopher Meatloaf that says, I would do anything for fill in the blank. And what comes after that, but I won't do that. But I won't do that. So today, what are you willing to do for health? And so, as always, we have world-renowned New York Times best-selling author, professor, researcher, activist, and one of my favorites, musician, because he's in my radio all the time in my car, Dr. Neal Barnard. And he is the founder of Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. Don't you just love that? Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. And so today he's going to share tips on how to use whole food, plant-based, vegan lifestyle to help eliminate your migraines. And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that Dr. Neal Barnard is here to do just that. Welcome back, Dr. Barnard, to the Lillian McDermott radio show / classroom.
Hey there, Lillian. It's great to be with you again.
It's a mouthful, but it's true. Isn't life a classroom? And it's full of lessons. And so share a little bit about, this whole concept of food as medicine, responsible eating.
So many of us grew up with the idea that if I have headaches or some other issue, that it just kind of came out of the blue and there's nothing that caused it and it's just life is unfair. Well, there's something to that. Sometimes things just do hit us, but very often we're having some kind of a reaction to something that we've taken in. And in some cases, what we took in isn't loving us back. It's not a very healthy food. But in other cases, it's a food that our body recognizes is not something that belongs in us. And so our body is reacting to. And the reason I say that is if you look at something like sword joints, if a person has rheumatoid arthritis, their joints are all swollen up and sore. But what is actually happening is for many of these people, something got in their body, a food, they are reacting to it. And when they react to it by making antibodies to destroy that food, the antibodies end up making their joints sore. So the point is, it might be something as peculiar as a migraine, which how could that possibly relate to foods? Well, sometimes our bodies react to things in peculiar ways. The good news is that gives you some control, because once you know how things are stimulating problems in your body, you've got some control over them.
You know, it's co-creation. We are co-creators in our life. If we just give all our power away, then we're just victims that are waiting for the card that we were dealt, or the dice that was rolled, or whatever. That is not a good way to live our life. But when we accept ownership and say, oh, I created this too, I can uncreate it. And that awareness is what you bring to this conversation, to all the research that you do, all the information that you share. And so I'm just want to say thank you for everything that you do to make that a reality in our co-creator's brain. You know?
Oh, well, thank you, Lillian. You know, it's really quite striking. We had one of our research participants was a law student, and she had migraine. And, you know, a migraine is not just a quick tension headache. It's gone in an hour. It's not like that. It lasts a long time. It's usually on one side of the head. It throbs. Sometimes it's like an air hammer, and you're sick. You're very often nauseated and throwing up and feeling horrible. So she's a law student. She's trying to read. She's trying to study. But these migraines were hitting her several times a week, and they would last overnight into the next day. So she came into a research study we were doing. We went through the food she was eating in a certain organized way that we'll talk about hopefully in a little bit. And she figured out what her triggers were, and her migraines completely went away. She never had another one.
Wow.
And so in other words, it wasn't go to the pharmacy and pick up a drug. Not that, I mean, there are drugs for migraines and they can be helpful, but that wasn't the answer. The answer was figure out the culprit here and let's get it out of our lives.
Okay, well, that's a great plan. And I think that that's what our purpose is today, is to figure out a plan, because one size does not fit all. As you know, Dr. Barnard, my registered service mark is you can take a pill or you can take responsibility. The pill assumes that one size fits all. If I have a migraine, my migraine is the same as your migraine, and that pill is going to help both of us. But that's not real. Everybody is unique. And so how do we funnel, because you have all this information up here, and we need to funnel as to what is the culprit. And instead of using the pill, we take ownership again. So let's talk about funneling it down to a bite size where we can say, okay, this is what's causing our migraine, never doing it again, because I am willing not to do this. I'm willing to do something different so that I can get a different result. So how do we narrow it down? What are the steps?
Well, the science on this really started a number of years ago, where people started noticing that certain foods would trigger migraines. Now, at first, they didn't figure out very many foods. They said it's aged cheese, it's red wine, it's sausage, and it's chocolate. And so if I don't eat those, then I won't get a migraine. And what these things had in common was that they had tyramine in them, which is an amino acid that the body can react to. And fair enough. So when people avoid these things, they do better. However, there were still a lot of people who had migraines, even though they weren't eating aged cheese and sausage and red wine and chocolate. They weren't eating these things. So researchers went a little further, and they started eliminating more foods, discovering that there were other things that were problem foods. So here's what we did in our research. We brought in a large group of people. They all had migraines. And we said, for the next 4 weeks, not just are we not going to eat aged cheese and sausage, but we're not going to have animal products at all. It was a totally vegan diet, so we went further. And we did that for 4 weeks, and many of the people, their migraines diminished or went away. But then if they still had migraines, then we went to another step. And this is a challenge, but it's a very helpful thing. You limit the diet for temporarily to just a very few foods that I call pain-safe foods, foods that don't cause pain. So that's rice, really any kind of rice, cooked vegetables, So your broccoli or kale or whatever.
Not
carrot,
raw, so cooked.
in this case, yeah, we really cook them a lot. And the reason you may want to have raw vegetables at other times, and that's fine. But the reason we cook them is if there's a protein in it you're reacting to, I want to denature it with cooking. So rice and other grains like quinoa are fine, but we took away wheat. And then we added vegetables, certain fruits, but we would actually have it be cooked fruits like applesauce and things. Now, you could eat as much as you wanted, but it was a very, very restricted number of foods.
Yeah.
And then what you discover is the migraines just settle down at that point. So then what do? When the migraines are gone, I start bringing the foods back in. And you only do this one time in your life, but if you do it, you discover your culprit. So we might bring back in bananas. You haven't had bananas. So eat 3 or 4 bananas a day, do the same thing next day. And if that doesn't trigger a migraine, then bananas are not your trigger. And you keep them. And then the next day, bring back apples. Haven't had apples, so have 2 or 3 or 4. Do that a couple days in a row. If it doesn't trigger a migraine, keep that too. Then bring in corn. Then bring in onions and tomatoes and nuts. And do each one at a time, every 2 days, having a generous amount. And if it does trigger a migraine, take it out. Back up, let your head settle down, and then reinvigorate. So the dozen foods that we have found that trigger them in order: dairy products, number 1, chocolate, sorry to tell you, which can be partly, maybe the chocolate, it may also be that chocolate has dairy in it a lot of times. So dairy products, number 1, chocolate, eggs, citrus fruits. For some people, citrus fruits are wonderful and very helpful, but if it triggers your migraine, that's it. Meat of just about any kind. Wheat products, once again, wheat is okay, but if wheat causes you to react, as it does for some people.
Could it be the GMO?
That's a great question, because many people have said, wait a minute, we didn't used to react to wheat all the time. Yeah. Why are people reacting to wheat? Is it because it's GMO or it's a new breed? I don't know the answer to that, but you can test yourself. And there are a lot of wheat variants too. So dairy products, chocolate, eggs, citrus fruits, meat, wheat, nuts, tomatoes, onions, corn, apples, bananas. That's my dirty dozen list. But it's also good to be on the lookout for something else that might trigger it. I had thought that sweet potatoes could never trigger migraines in anyone because they're very healthy food. They are. But I've seen about 3 or 4 people where this innocent sweet potato is their trigger. So all I do is you go vegan for about 4 weeks. If that solves your problem, you've solved your problem. But if not, then what you do is you go to just one of the pain-safe foods: rice, cooked vegetables, a few cooked fruits, and you're going to be eating very few foods, but as much as you want of these things. And then once your migraines have settled down, bring these foods back one at a time, starting at the bottom of the list with bananas, then apples, then corn, and onions, and tomatoes. And it works great. And, oh, by the way, Lillian, I know you have a copy of my book, The Cheese Trap. In The Cheese Trap, because so many people react to cheese, in the back of that book, I put this elimination diet in the back to show people how to do it.
Yes.
That's the one.
It's here. So here's the back of the book.
Yeah,
the front of the book has something totally different because it's my inspiration. But yes, if you go in there, you will get the elimination. But let me ask you something, because and by the way, for those of you who are in the classroom today at Lillian's radio show on Facebook Live, if you have a question for Dr. Barnard, type in a Q, write your question, and we'll ask it during the classroom, so that it's worth you getting up early to be a part of this broadcast. Now, because one size does not fit all, not everybody's going to react the same way. Allergies are intermittent. One day you eat this and you don't react, but maybe 3 days later you eat it again and it could kill you. I mean, so allergies are really crazy. Would it be possible to do a scratch test or have your blood evaluated? Because some people are not patient to do the elimination diet.
Yes, you can. And there are practitioners who will do that for you. The only caution I have is that they will show you're sensitive to everything you ever thought of. They will give you are going to go crazy because you're going to see a list of so many foods you react to. And it's worth being, it's sometimes a little skeptical to see if maybe I'm reacting to that, but maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm okay with that food. So that's why what we do is really direct. Does the food cause a migraine or not? By the way, you can do the same approach with rheumatoid arthritis. We're doing a research study right now in people who have rheumatoid arthritis using exactly the same elimination diet, and it works really, really well.
Very good. Very good. Okay. So we're talking about food and we're focusing on food, but could a migraine be triggered by stress, lack of exercise, environmental, pollution? Let's talk about that real quick because it's not the point of the class, but perhaps maybe you can give us some insight.
Yes, those things can trigger migraines, and they can also make you more vulnerable to the effects of foods. You're more vulnerable at those times. What times are we talking about? Seasonal changes can do it. Let's say you're on a trip and you haven't had a chance to stop by and eat, and your blood sugar is going way, way down. Fasting is rough for people with migraines. Sleep, missing sleep. But for some people, sleeping too much can trigger their migraines. So what we find is it's good to kind of keep a routine, and you're going to be okay. For some women, they discover that migraines tend to hit them more shortly before their menstrual period. That can be a time of vulnerability. But with all of these things, I think of it as vulnerability, meaning, what if your issue is dairy? But maybe in the middle of your cycle, when you're well rested, it won't hit you too much, but then toward the end of the month, bang, it hits you. And by the way, I should mention something real quick. I have a friend. She said, I got terrible migraines. What can I do? And I walked her through what you and I described. And then what she would discover is that if she had dairy products at any point, she would get a migraine. And she said, Neal, how can this be? I ate low-fat milk. It wasn't aged cheese. It wasn't even regular. It wasn't even 2%. I still got a migraine. Sometimes these healthy versions of foods still cause the problem. With dairy, I suspect it's not the fat at all. Fat causes other problems. But I think with dairy, it's probably the protein that we're reacting to in the dairy.
Is that casein? Casein?
Yeah, you got it. Okay. Casein, C-A-S-E-I-N. Casein is it's an amazing thing. It's a protein in milk products, and your body will break it down and make proteins out of it. However, unlike just about every other protein, when casein goes down your esophagus and into your stomach and into your intestinal tract, it breaks apart to release really short little peptide strings. They're called casomorphins, casein-derived morphine-like compounds. The reason they have that name is they go to the brain, and they attach to the very same brain receptors that morphine or heroin would attach to.
Interesting.
And so that means people get a little bit of calming effect from the cheese, maybe, but you don't want foods messing around with your brain. And a lot of people do have brain issues related to dairy products.
Interesting.
When I say brain issues, I mean migraine or other things.
Now, I think the word you said, tyrosine, what was the word that you used before?
Tyramine.
Tryptamine. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had mentioned that what they had in common was tyramine, the cheeses and all these other products that you mentioned. But what about nitrates? Is that a byproduct of nitrate? Because when you think of hot dogs and when you think of deli meats, we've been warned about nitrates. And so now they have nitrate-free deli, nitrate-free hot dogs. Does that make a difference?
It could. Nitrates are something that you don't want to have them from these products. You're thinking, right, bologna, hot dogs, all those things.
Yeah.
Nitrates were really started out as a preservative, but they have a certain kind of flavor, which is the reason the bologna or hot dogs taste the way they do. And where people are particularly concerned about them is with regard to colorectal cancer,
Yes.
Which is no joke. These processed meats, every serving that you have of them on a daily basis increases colorectal cancer risk about 18%. So that means a person who has bacon for breakfast and pepperoni on their pizza at night, that's 2 servings, that's a 36% increased risk of colorectal cancer. But then people have looked at nitrates for all kinds of other mischief that they do, and effects on the brain and others are all part of that list.
Yeah, and we do a lot of things to insult our body. I had mentioned to you, I think it was the last time you were on, that I have this meme that says, no one ever runs into a burning building to breathe the air. And I was sharing that, it's people who smoke, and I'm just concerned that they're taking in smoke when most people save their lives. They're risking their lives to save you out of a burning building. We're insulting our body by putting smoke in our body. And so I had mentioned that to someone, and she said, I would run into a burning building if it was bacon. It was like if it was a bacon factory. So we don't even think about the things that we are doing to our bodies that could insult us. So if you're looking at nitrates have been linked to carcinogen, but yet we still consume these products. You've just given us a great reason why not to do it. But is it enough? Is it enough for people to say, I've got to stop this?
And we've all been there. And I don't want listeners to think that this is something that they should feel ashamed of or something.
Correct.
We all make wrong turns. And we grow up in a culture that guides us to do things. Sometimes it guides us to not such healthy foods, but it also guides us to feel that we're a little bit immortal and that we can eat these things with no problem.
Yes.
So bacon is now a fad, and young people are buying bacon flavored soap, and they're thinking, oh, they won't have any problems. And I got to tell you, Lillian, I was one of these people. When I have to tell you this, when I was in medical school, I grew up in North Dakota, and I moved to Washington, D.C. to go to medical school. And I would study in the library, and I would sneak into the library in my backpack, hamburgers that I got out of the machine, and I'd sit in my study carrel eating my burgers with ketchup and stuff like this, hoping that people wouldn't detect the smell. But I studied really hard, and so I bring my meals with me. But they were like the most unhealthy foods ever. And then around the same time, when I would go in, I shouldn't tell you all this, Lillian, but I have to tell you, I would go into the hospital because I was starting to see patients as a medical student. And I would stop at the gift shop and buy cigarettes, and I would light up my menthol cigarettes. And my head of surgery was buying Marlboros. And we would smoke, and you could walk into the doctor's lounge, and it was like, smoke everywhere. And, we weren't stupid. We knew that cigarettes caused cancer. But we had this idea that I'm under so much stress that now I'll smoke, and it takes long to get cancer. I'll quit eventually. But the point I'm making is that we all make really bad decisions because we get this idea, I like it, it's part of my culture. It won't really hurt me too much.
I want to fit in.
Or I'll just cut down. Back when I was a younger person, people would cut down on smoking, which is not the same as quitting. Or I'll cut down, I'll only have that pork chop every other day. Anyhow, the reason I'm sharing this is I don't want people to think that I somehow grew up with no vices. We had
Correct.
But you realize, what kind of life do I want to live?
Exactly. People say this all the time. I'm going to die from something, might as well enjoy life. But you know what? That same saying, 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road, is how do I want to die? How do I want to live? And then how do I want to die? Because I don't want to die a drawn out long life, death because of dis-ease. People are getting sick now in their 60s, and they're living through the medications, prolonging their lives because of, there's no way back. And in reality, many, not all, but many of these diseases can be helped better even by just changing your diet and nutrition, just to help some of these symptoms get better. I don't know, maybe I'm not explaining this correctly, but the choices we make today may not harm us today. We might think that they give us, that satisfaction or release stress or whatever, but really it's giving us more stress for our future because it could be entwined with dis-ease.
Many people will say, and in fact, I used to say this back when I was a smoker a generation ago. I love cigarettes. I know that they're bad. I know they'll cause cancer, but really, cigarettes. If you've got all kinds of problems, at least you can have a cigarette. But what you discover is that when you quit smoking, you love being a non-smoker. You love that actually more than you love being a smoker, because your clothes don't stink, and you're that you're more likely to be healthy. You're not the pariah who has to stand outside the restaurant. So when people quit, they like that better. And the same is true with food. people will say, well, I love a steak, or I love cheese, or I love this, or I love that. But what you discover, and to people's surprise, because we brought thousands of people into plant-based diets in our research studies, what they discover is after a little transition, they say, wait a minute, I love this more than I love that. And what they love are two things. They love the wide range of foods that they never knew existed.
Correct.
Because when I was a kid in Fargo, what did we eat? We ate roast beef, baked potatoes, corn. On special occasions, it was peas. That's like.
It doesn't get any better than that, Dr. Barnard.
That was about it. But I started a completely vegan diet, a completely plant-based diet. And at first I was thinking, what am I going to eat? But then I discovered, holy cow, there is Italian cuisine, there's Mexican cuisine, I can go to the sushi bar and get vegan sushi. I can go, to all kinds of restaurants, Thai, Vietnamese, Ethiopian. And I thought, if you said, no, you can't have any of that food, you got to go back to your roast beef and baked potatoes and corn, I'd say that's really restrictive. So anyway, the point I'm making is that yes, meat eaters feel like I love meat, and I understand that because I was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Hamburgers and all. But after that transition, I discovered I love the food more. And I also like just the feeling to have of being in a healthier body, not to mention the fact that, I'm not eating in such a way that's going to hurt the environment or the animals or anybody like that.
Yeah. And that's good. And so you had mentioned stress in your conversation, that many people think that I'm stressed, this is going to relieve my stress, so I'm going to do it. But really it's a hamster in a wheel thinking that they're going somewhere, but it's just feeding the stress. So in a situation where migraine is stress, could it be stress and food, or stress and all these pollutants that we're putting in our body?
Yeah, it sure can. And also during times of stress, that when people are stressed, that's a time when they also tend to cut back on sleep. They might be drinking more. If they're under stress, they're not eating well. They decide, I'm under stress. Now is not a time when I'm going to worry about healthy eating. So stress itself has effect, but it also leads us into other not so good habits. By the way, speaking of stress, I want people to realize that a migraine is not just a typical stress headache. It might be the afternoon, you had a tough day, and you've got this sort of diffuse headache that's going to go away after an hour or so. That's a stress headache. That's not a migraine. But stress can lead to a migraine. Mm-hmm. And then a migraine is when you have this usually one-sided pounding air hammer going against your head, and you're sick. And then once the migraine kicks in, you're going to live with it for the next many hours, or sometimes a couple of days.
Wow. Yes, exactly. So in your studies that you've done about migraine research and doing things and eating certain foods, eliminating, I love your pain-free foods, like when you said rice, cooked vegetables, cooked fruits, anything else that I miss? No wheat, no dairy.
That's what surprises people. We avoid the animal products, and then we also, dairy particularly. But then we do have to avoid wheat, and we have to avoid those dirty dozen that I mentioned.
Yes. Dairy
products, chocolate, eggs, citrus fruits, meat, wheat, nuts, tomatoes, onions, corn, apples, bananas. That's my super bad list. But whatever else is there, you can have. But and I should also emphasize that I mentioned eating nothing but rice and some cooked vegetables. You're only doing this one time.
Yes.
This is
for 4 weeks, right?
Yeah. Sometimes people do it even less than that.
Okay.
I've done this, and it's the most amazing thing. I think everybody should do it at one point, just to see how you react to certain foods. Many people have no idea. And when I say no idea, I mean their digestion is acting up. And so if you go to this really basic diet, do that for even a week or sometimes even just a few days, and their digestion just totally sorts out. And then bring these foods back into your diet one at a time and just see how you react to it. And you discover, that's why I had cramps. Or that's why my joints hurt, or that's why I have a skin condition, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, acne. I mean, something simple as acne. When I discovered that I had food allergies, this was back in 1996, that's when they started altering food. We didn't know they were altering dairy and they were altering wheat. We didn't know that there was such a thing as antibiotics in our dairy products, or altered genetically modified organisms in our food. And for 2 years, I experienced acne and problems with my throat, like hoarseness. I couldn't sing anymore. There were so many different things. Who would have known it was associated with food? It wasn't until I became my own MD, my own medical detective, that I discovered that these things, but it was like instantly. And then it happened again, about a year into doing the show. Someone challenged me to go raw vegan for 1 month. And it was amazing how good I felt. I didn't feel bad. I felt better. So I guess that if we embrace that, if we could feel better, why not try it for a little bit? It's not like if we decide to go back to it, then we decide to go back to it, but at least it's worth giving a try. So with that in mind, I want to share that this is what responsibility looks like, and it's so amazing. I love the title of Dr. Neal Barnard's committee. It's his website. It's PCRM, Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. But really that word responsibility is a part of everybody's life, because we are co-creators. And so if we take ownership and responsibility, no blame, no shame, no fault, no duty, we're talking about ownership and empowerment, then our life completely changes. Look at how it changed Dr. Barnard's life. Look at how it's changed my life as well. So I want to encourage you, if you haven't done so already, subscribe at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is where we have these responsibility questions. And it's so wonderful that we also have partners, sponsors that have stood with us because they know that this information isn't readily available on television. What you get on television is take this pill for a migraine, and the side effects will include, and it goes on for 45 seconds, where the pill is just 1 second. And the benefit might help some people, but not all. One size does not fit all. So I want to thank all the people that have stood next to us, all the teachers that come on the classroom to help us become our own medical detective, our own MD. And so groups like Liberty Health Share, and you can go to healthshare.org. And by the way, there is a button that says these are sponsors button, and you can go and check them out. And there are freebies and giveaways and discounts. So I want to encourage you to subscribe at whenyouneedafriend.com. Sponsors like Liberty Health Share, Keep Me Safe Organics Worldwide, which is beauty products without any toxicity, and they are non-synthetic. It's a green company, so we would be also giving back to the community, not just removing the toxins from our body. First Alternative Care, unbelievable what they're doing, 24/7 medical, non-urgent dermatology and family and 3 hours of behavioral health counseling for the entire household for $45. It's unbelievable the things that you can learn about yourself just through the portal. And we have Dr. Grable, who is holistic, alternative, functional in Jacksonville Beach, Florida, Complementary Care Center. We also have the pharmacy in Merritt Island. Mention my name, get 20% off. They also do a lot of topical solutions for you and for your pets as well. And last but not least, the enrolled, the Live Longer Medical, who's making your inside as beautiful as your outsides. But I said last but not least, but no, now I'm saying, remember about responsibility. You too can become an enrolled student in the classroom, where you can be a donor to make sure the classroom continues to grow. So please become a subscriber at When You Need a Friend. Like us, share us, help if you can't donate, at least be a part of spreading the good news. Dr. Barnard talked about good news, that there's good news, that we can learn about our body, change some things around, so that we can live the healthy life that we want. And so, Dr. Barnard, thank you so much for your time, because that's another way that we donate to the classroom, is through time. talent and treasure. And you're certainly doing all of that. And I know that we're probably, I want to check and see what our teachers' pets have been asking. I want to remind you that if you put in a Q, that notifies us that you have a question. And I know that many of you have questions. Maybe sometimes you make a statement. So I'm going to take the moment. If it doesn't have a Q on it, then we'll wait till the end of the class until the podcast is recorded. But I'm going to quickly look down. If I see something, bananas. Why are bananas such a, they're not safe? That's part of your dirty dozen or whatever that you talk about for migraines. Why are bananas not? Because there's a lot of people talking about bananas here.
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, let me say that these foods aren't necessarily unhealthy. Some of them are, some aren't. If you're, let's say you're eating strawberries, there's nothing wrong with a strawberry, but if you happen to be allergic to it, you just can't have it. So I'm going to say there's nothing wrong with a banana. Bananas are healthy food. They have nice, healthy, complex carbohydrate. It's a good thing, but if it causes your migraine, then you just can't have it. Apples are one of the dozen triggers too. Keep
an apple, so that they say that you eat an apple a day keeps the doctor away, but not for everybody, right?
There's nothing wrong with apples, but if you react to it, then that's the issue. Now, what brings these things together, and this is kind of a neat question, because what brings these things together is often these are foods that people were not exposed to during our evolution. So human beings began, of course, in Eastern Africa, and from there we wandered out to all the rest of the world. And bananas are not from Eastern Africa, and neither are apples, and neither are tomatoes, and neither are onions, and these foods are not from there. So we've ended up in places where there are foods that we just never would have been exposed to. Give you a sort of modern day example. When Columbus arrived in the New World, he had tomatoes and chocolate, which he had never had before. And so these were things that they had not grown up with or been used to, and they would have reactions to them. So all of these foods are like that. Very nature never thought that a human being was going to consume milk from a cow, and if we do, we can have reactions to that.
Yes. Okay. So with that in mind, with bananas, I mean, it's like I eat bananas almost every day. It could be causing me a trigger. I don't even know. So you would suggest that we eliminate that from our diet, and if our symptoms go away, then we're okay?
Only temporarily. So the whole idea is if you have a symptom, and where this elimination program really works well is with migraines or any kind of autoimmune condition. So that can be rheumatoid arthritis or eczema, or people do it also with thyroid conditions, hypo or hyperthyroidism. And once again, there's nothing necessarily wrong with wheat or with nuts, but some people react to them. And if that's you, then you want to get it out of your life. But if you can tolerate it, perfectly fine. Tomatoes are on the list. So if you tolerate tomatoes, there's no reason not to have them. That red color is lycopene. It's a good antioxidant. But if tomatoes trigger your headache, then you can decide to leave them out.
It's time to make some adjustments and do whatever it takes to live the life that we want. Okay, so there's a question from Ginny. And so Ginny, she wrote the Q. Okay, so I just missed it. Okay, it says, the whole food plant-based diet, is it helpful to someone with a binge eating disorder?
Yes, it sure can be. When we look at particularly kids who get into eating disorders, sometimes it'll start with they're gaining a little bit of weight, and somebody comments on their weight, and they become mortified, and so they starve. They say, I'm not going to eat anything, and they can become very thin. They're afraid of looking the slightest bit overweight. They can even be underweight, but they're afraid of it. And then because their body is starving, they will sometimes react by overeating, or certain times we can get food addictions that just grab a hold of us. And it can be a sugar addiction, but there are some people where they're hooked on cheese or chocolate or meat or something like that, where they're overdoing it with these things. A plant-based diet does a couple things. A simple whole foods plant-based diet has plenty of fiber, not much fat, so it keeps your weight into a healthy range, so you're not so likely to get overweight or underweight.
Yes. And
it's also satisfying, and the foods tend to be tasty without throwing you into that addictive cycle. So it's a really good way to go.
Yeah, these are triggers that cause, like you had mentioned, was it casein? You had mentioned
Right.
that it has a morphine-like effect where it draws that in. So yes, we do these things without even knowing that we're doing it. Okay, so Camilla has a question as well. Sorry, Camilla, I didn't realize that was a question. So thank you so much I went back to look at it. Okay, she says, is there a connection between hypothyroidism and migraines, even on a plant-based vegan diet and a Levoxine pill? She says, I do take B12.
Okay, taking B12 is a good idea. Frankly, it's a good idea for everybody. And I believe it's essential for people who follow, as I do, follow a vegan diet. B12 is great. But can thyroid issues feed into migraine? Sure. Thyroid conditions are very mysterious for some folks. In other words, you have really just vague symptoms. I'm gaining weight, my energy's not very good, my hair is not the same. What could it be? And you go to the doctor who says, let me do a blood test. And the doctor finds that your thyroid gland is not cranking out thyroid hormone. And there are lots of causes of that. But the biggest cause in the United States, it's an immune condition where your body is actually attacking your own thyroid. And something is triggering that. What I mean is there's perhaps some food that you're eating that's causing the body to react by making antibodies to attack that food. And those same antibodies, they're like little microscopic torpedoes that end up attacking your thyroid. And they're putting a brake on the thyroid, making it not work. In other cases, they're putting the gas on the thyroid. They're making the thyroid go into overdrive with hyperthyroidism. So typical cases of hypo or hyperthyroidism are autoimmune conditions. And not everybody's going to get better from a diet change, but I encourage people to give it a try. And in fact, my new book, which is coming out early next year, has a whole chapter on the thyroid gland. And we talk about people who have actually cured themselves of both hypothyroidism and hyperthyroidism, not with pills, but by adjusting the diet and getting out of that autoimmune reaction.
Very good, very good. And so, since you mentioned the book, I'd love to shift a little bit because I still do have some questions. Believe it or not, I still have some questions about migraines.
Okay, it's all right.
Okay, so the name of your book is Your Body in Balance. And so go ahead and show it, Vanna.
Okay, here it is.
Vanna White, yes.
Here it is.
There he goes. Isn't it beautiful?
They did a nice job with it. Yes, they did.
Yes. And Dr. Barnard's going to come back and we're going to offer some of these books away because he is so generous the way he, whenever he creates a beautiful, I call it his new baby, is Your Body in Balance. And it's really what you had mentioned to me, that it's about food and how it affects our hormones. Who would have thought that? Isn't that part of migraines too?
Well, for sure. I mean, we mentioned that during that certain time of the month, migraines are more likely to kick in. But this started for me in a kind of peculiar way. I was sitting at my desk and my phone rang. And it was a young woman who said, Dr. Barnard, I can't get out of bed. She had such bad menstrual cramps. Many women have cramps, but for some, they're just really off the scale. And that was her. And she said, I need your help. And she wanted me to give her a prescription of Demerol so that she could function. She had a business trip she had to go on. So I said, well, I could give you painkillers for a couple of days, but I started to realize that menstrual cramps relate to hormonal shifts. Over the course of a month, the estrogen, female sex hormone, thickens up the lining of the uterus. And at the end of the month, that increased lining, that thickened lining, breaks up in menstrual flow. And as it breaks up, it releases prostaglandins that cause cramps. So I started thinking, well, how can I reduce the amount of estrogen in her blood so that she doesn't have that pronounced thickening and causing all those prostaglandin production? And I realized in cancer patients, we've been doing this for a long time. When people with breast cancer, who obviously want to do well and thrive and survive, when they cut the fat out of their diet, their estrogen levels fall a little bit. That takes the heat off the cancer. If they eat high fiber foods, same story, their estrogen levels fall. So I suggested to this young woman, I said, would you like to try an experiment? So let me give you some painkillers for the next 2 days. But how about for the next month? No animal products at all, and keep oils really, really low, foods as natural as you can, and you're going to be a vegan for the next month. She says, I'll try it. But she called me 4 weeks later and said, this is the most amazing thing. My period started with zero symptoms, nothing. And so month after month, she stuck with it and she was fine, unless she would kind of liberalize her diet and then she had problems again. Wow. So I did a research study with our friends at Georgetown University Department of Obstetrics and Gynecology, where we brought in a large group of women and we tested the diet in them. And we discovered two things. Well, more than that. The first thing was that if they had PMS symptoms, I'm talking about bloating, water retention, that was diminished. If they had mood changes leading up to their period, that was diminished. But then when their pain would hit, it was much shorter in duration. Wow. And much lower in intensity. For some, it was gone. For others, less effect. But generally speaking, they noticed that their foods were affecting their hormones in a really healthy, positive way. And so we started applying this to all kinds of conditions. But that's what opened the door.
Amazing. It's amazing how sometimes things come to you like that, and you could have just responded and that would have been it. But the fact that was like an aha moment for you, that it's time to dig deeper, and that you would be able to create that book to help so many other women and other people. Because what about men who have prostate enlargement? Could that be a situation where could be driven by animal products or yes. hormones or
there are hormone-related cancers, and you can certainly get them even if you're on a totally healthy diet. Cancer is not fair and it can hit you, but we can reduce our risk of these things with a healthy, completely plant-based diet. It brings hormones into better balance. And I got to tell you a story. In the course of this cramps study that we were doing with our friends at Georgetown, we asked the women participants during the study to test foods. For 2 months, vegan diet, low fat. But we also said, please don't take any hormone pills during this 2 months because that's going to confuse our study. So some of them had been on birth control pills. We said, can you use some other kind of contraception during the study? And one of the women said, don't worry about me. My husband and I gave up the idea of having a baby years ago because we just were infertile. And she said, it's not him, it's me, I don't ovulate. The second month she was in the study, she's on this healthy vegan diet, feeling great, and she comes into our research center and said, I've got good news and bad news. The bad news is I'm dropping out of your study. The good news is I'm pregnant. And what happened was, because of the food she was eating, her hormones were just never in balance. And she finally got her hormones into balance. She was ovulating normally. She got pregnant. And about 8 years later, I was giving a lecture in another town. And I didn't realize that she lived in this town where I was lecturing. She came to the lecture with her 3 kids. And it was, the idea that when you think of people who are dealing with fertility issues, sometimes they just really get tortured by tests and treatments that are phenomenally costly. And then also the natural lovemaking becomes a sterile exercise where you're thinking, maybe we can make it work, and the pressure and the guilt and the shame and the family members breathing down your neck and all that stuff. And I say, wait, just get rid of all that. Yeah. And foods may or may not help, but it starts with getting your body in balance. Let's do that. And if there are other issues, you can take care of them. But if your body is not in balance, the problems are not really being addressed at a level.
Yeah. I mean, it puts us in a victim mentality again. It's like, we can't have a child. And you start focusing on, you can't have a child and how we're going to have this child. But it's starting with the food is a very inexpensive way to start the trial, to start, working and loving your body back again. They say we are what we eat, but we are what we think. And it's very stressful to think you can't have a child. And so being able to have the choices of just changing your nutrition, to look at what a beautiful story. Thank you so much for sharing. And I'm sure that there are a lot of people that will just take this little clip and send it to all their friends who are trying to have babies right now, because it seems like lately many couples are having fertility issues. And there's so much hormones in the foods that we're eating with animal products that for us to not think that would unite with our body, I don't know. We just need that kind of education. And thank you so much for that.
There are really 2 issues that I should mention.
Okay.
Certain foods do actually contain hormones. Dairy products contain the estrogen that the cow made. Many people don't realize that on typical dairies, cows are impregnated annually, and they're pregnant for about 9 months. So 9 months out of 12, the cow is pregnant. Pregnant animals make a lot of estrogen. It gets in the milk. It's only a trace. But when you turn milk into cheese, those traces are somewhat more concentrated. So cheese has estrogens in it, and your average person eats about 35 pounds of that a year. The other thing, though, is that your body has a way of getting rid of estrogens. When your liver will take estrogens out of the blood and send them through a little tube called the bile duct into the intestinal tract, and then you're literally flushing the estrogens away. However, this only works if you have high fiber foods in your diet, because the fiber traps those estrogens in the intestine and carries them out. What if you had chicken breast for lunch, or salmon and yogurt? Those are not from plants, so they have zero fiber. So your liver still filters the estrogen out. It still sends it into the intestine, but there isn't any fiber there. So the estrogens go back into the blood and go around again. Doctors call this enterohepatic circulation. What it means is your estrogen levels are out of balance. They're higher levels than they should be. That's where the cramping comes from, we believe. That's where fertility issues come from. So get your body in balance by bringing the fiber back in, so that your hormone levels go to where nature thought they would be dialed right.
Amazing. I just love all the teachers in the classroom. You are so amazing. That's such a great lesson for all of us to learn, how our bodies work. We just eat and we poop. We eat and we poop. We don't think about what happens in between. And so it is amazing that we are a little petri dish with an experiment going on. And so what we're putting in is going to affect our body, period. And the addictive personality, we need to be real with ourselves, that we have addictions, whether it's sugar or animal products or, whatever it is, not to be shamed, because that is just as bad. Is that the thought of being shamed? It's just being real with ourselves and saying, enough. I love my body. Our bodies are a temple, and loving our bodies mean giving it what it needs. I would never give a newborn baby a piece of steak. And so I don't know what happens to our lives as we get older, and we just need to just rewrite these programs that we were taught. And so, being able to be gentle on our body, just to say, what's going on? I just recently did a 5-day water fast with Dr. Michael Clapper. And I learned so much about my body by just giving it water. And so I believe everybody deserves to do this to themselves, so you can fall in love with your body again and say, I want to give you what you deserve, what you need, and go from there. And, today, Dr. Barnard, we were talking about migraines, but it's a sign. A migraine is a sign of being out of balance, wouldn't you say?
I would say so. And, a migraine isn't going to kill you, but it's going to feel like it is. Yes. And so when people can get back into balance, it's a good thing. By the way, let me say one other thing, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
When we talk about hormonal issues, they can run the range from something like cramps to something like breast cancer or ovarian cancer, prostate cancer in men. Every October, it's Breast Cancer Awareness Month. So I have teamed up with breast cancer surgeon Christy Funk, who was well known, I guess, because she was the surgeon for Angelina Jolie and Sheryl Crow, and others have made her kind of the celebrity surgeon. But Dr. Funk said, wait a minute, I want people to eat in a really healthful way so that they and their families can be safe. So we set up a program called Let's Beat Breast Cancer. And you'll see it at our website at pcrm.org. You'll see the Let's Beat Breast Cancer program. And it walks you through 4 simple steps: healthy diet, lacing up your sneakers to exercise, getting away from alcohol, making sure that we have a healthy weight. It's really simple things that people can do to protect themselves and protect their families.
Yeah, health is not that complicated. We just make it that way. So I have 2 more questions for you, but I know the podcast is almost over. And the 2 questions for those of you who are watching on or listening on podcast, if you want to join us live on Facebook, you can at Lillian's Radio Show, or you can watch the entire broadcast in the class on YouTube as well. But I have 2 questions. Herbs and hydration. And I know that we're about to wrap up our podcast, but Dr. Barnard, it's always so wonderful to have you on. I'm so grateful to you. And if you don't mind giving us like maybe 5 extra minutes after to ask some questions, I'd appreciate it. Thank you so much, Dr. Barnard. For those of you who want to learn more, go to pcrm.org. That's Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. pcrm.org. Please remember, we are in choice. We're always in choice. What will you choose? Will you do everything for blank? Let's see. We'll see. Please remember, I'll be right here waiting for you worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. This is Lillian McDermott and Dr. Neal Barnard wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day
on the Lillian
ever.
McDermott Radio Show are
I
intended for the individual callers and guests on the program and are presented to our wider audience solely for general educational purposes. Please act responsibly and consult personally with your own medical, psychological, or nutritional expert before taking any steps to improve your life.
Okay, sorry about that. I started talking over the guy, but be responsible. That's very important, to be responsible. So Dr. Barnard, I mentioned that I had 2 questions, herbs and hydration, and there's a couple of questions left. Do you have the time? I don't, if you don't, I understand.
Yeah, sure, you bet.
Okay. So herbs, are there certain herbs that can alleviate symptoms as well?
There are 2 that have been studied for a long time. One is called butterbur. It's B-U-T-T-E-R-B-U-R, butterbur. And the other is called feverfew. And you'll see them at health food stores. They appear to be safe. Both of them do seem to reduce migraine frequency. So what it is, it's not a treatment. So if I've got a migraine, that's not the time to take butterbur. It's something that people with migraines take on a consistent basis so their migraines don't come. So butterbur is one, feverfew is the other. They do have some science behind them. And go to the store and you can pick them up and see. Regarding hydration, yes, don't let yourself get dehydrated for a couple of reasons. One is your body needs hydration for normal body chemistry. The other thing is some people get tricked a little bit. When they are dehydrated, they find themselves eating a lot. They're eating more food, and they realize they thought it was hunger, but they're actually just thirsty. So when water is a part of your life, that's good. Now, the thing I do hasten to add is you can hydrate with water, but if you're consuming watery foods, that counts too. So let's say you're having lots of fruits and you're starting your day with a papaya and a mango and so forth. You don't necessarily have to have a glass of water on top of that. When people talk about that old maxim of 8 ounce glasses of water per day, that's assuming you're not getting water from any other source. If you're having fruits and soups and things, you don't have to add the water in addition. But stay ahead on your hydration. Don't wait until you're collapse to get water. It's good to stay ahead, especially when you're physically active, especially when it's warm outside.
Very good. Well, hydration is also, and perhaps maybe you can maybe elaborate a little bit more on this, but whenever we're thirsty, it could be translated in our brain as hunger.
Right. Yes. I don't exactly know why this is, but you see this very often where people are snacking and so forth. And if you just say to them, okay, I want you to try this out. Have some water there at your desk and drink water and make sure you stay ahead. What you discover is they snack a lot less because they were responding to a sort of a vague cue, thinking, I need food. When in fact, they were just marginally dehydrated and they needed more water.
Yes. Try it. It really does work. Like I love to eat. I love to eat. And so I whenever I'm hungry, I say, okay, let me have something to drink first before I go run and raid the refrigerator. Okay, so I want to thank all you teachers' pets who have tuned in to the Lillian McDermott radio show classroom. So I want to say thank you to all of you. Kimberly Kirshner is a friend of mine, and she's also certified in your program. And so she is doing her part in the state of Florida. So I want to encourage all of you to, if Kimberly, she's going to be coming on as well to teach us a few lessons and be an extension of you, Dr. Barnard. So thank you.
Oh, that's fantastic. Great.
That's okay. So Glenda has a question. She said, we bought the grass-fed cow for meat. My question is that we found out that she was pregnant when they slaughtered her. Does that affect the meat with hormones? Eek.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
Isn't
where do
that
we start?
inhumane?
Where do we start? Sure. I mean, there are hormones in the body that may or may get into the meat. Also, regardless of what the cow is eating, some cattle, some people who are in the cattle business inject various hormones into their cows. There are about 5 or maybe more that can legally be used. These are estrogens, testosterone, and variants of those. Do traces get into the meat? Maybe. It's been very controversial. But the point I was trying to make earlier is that the food itself, even if it doesn't have hormones in it, it will cause your hormones to get out of balance, because high-fat foods cause hormones to rise, estrogen levels will rise, and high-fiber foods will do the opposite, and there's no fiber in meat. Let me say also that when you think about this cow, now I'm a doctor, so I don't want to tell you too much about values in your life, but I grew up in North Dakota, and I drove cattle to the stockyards at East St. Louis. And when they came off the truck, they were scared. And they were about to get auctioned off, and you know, it doesn't have a happy ending. And I made a choice in my own life to leave them alone and decide to do what I could to maybe respect them. And there are plenty of things that a person can eat that don't involve that kind of cruelty. So I don't mean to make judgments for other people's lives.
No, and I'm sure that was not
there's
intentional.
something to be said for just live and let live. And the payback you get for that is that all that cholesterol and saturated fat and salmonella and whatever else might have been in that meat is not part of your life anymore.
Yeah. There is a song that your group, share a little bit about your musical side, Dr. Barnard. There's a song that anyone who sees that video would probably give up meat right away. Would you like to share?
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah. For people who don't know about this, back when I was 6 years old, my parents, we were living in Fargo, and my parents had this idea that a civilized person ought to be able to play 2 musical instruments. So all my life I played the piano and the cello, and then I took up the guitar and all this stuff. And so even when I was in medical school, I still had bands and things. So my current band is called Carbon Works, and you might be thinking of a song. You'll see it on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and just click on Carbon Works, as in we are made of carbon and these are our works. There is a song called Louder Than Words, which has in it some footage, just footage of animals and some kind of endearing footage and some a little more concerning. But I wonder if you might be thinking of there's some cows in that video.
Crying cows.
Well, people may not realize humans are not the only animals that shed tears. Cows do too. And there's a picture of a cow who's being loaded up and he's being transported, he or she is being transported away, and you see these tears. But then in the very next scene, we see the cows being freed. They are going off into the pasture, and they're not going to be slaughtered. They're not going to be milked. They're out having a fun time. And, you know, each one is big and awkward. They're like a sofa on still. They're jumping around. And it's the goofiest thing to see these cows out celebrating their freedom. So anyway, for me as a doctor, we prescribe plant-based diets for your health. But for many people, what motivates them more is how they can spread a little kindness around the world. So if that song and video touches somebody's heart, then that's nice.
Yeah. I just wanted to share that because I remember being so touched by your music and that particular video. I saw it was one year that we were one time that you were coming on and we were talking about Carbon Works, and I replayed your music during the broadcast. It's such a beautiful, but Louder Than Words. That was just very touching. song as well, because you
Oh,
joined
thank
it
you.
with animals. So I want to encourage all of you to check out the video from Dr. Neal Barnard. It's called Louder Than Words. And then you're just going to get addicted to that much better than Twinkies. You know, that changes your mindset to see and to listen and to feel his music. So
There's a bunch of others there too. So.
Jen and Glenda, no judgment. I'm sure that you were trying to do what's best for your family, and I know that you didn't know that this was a pregnant cow, but just know that those are some of the things that do happen when we do eat animal products.
Well, one thing that should be understood, that this may have been I don't know if this was a spent dairy cow. It sounds like that was the case. When dairy cows live to be about 20 years of age in nature. But on dairies, after they hit about 4, they're not producing milk in sufficient quantity, or which is to say that their milk production has slacked off just enough that farmers have decided now's the time to turn them into hamburger, and they replace them with their daughters and granddaughters become the next dairy generation. So a lot of the low-grade meat that people will buy was a dairy cow, and the dairy cow was impregnated. And so along with it comes a calf that you didn't realize was there. So anyway, I know it's kind of creepy to think about.
But, we do need to think about these things, because we just, and I used to say, and the person who started the show is not the person who speaks to you today in the classroom. And so I would always say, I didn't kill it. I'm just going to eat it. If I don't eat it, no one else will eat it, and it's just going to go to waste. And that was my mentality back many years ago. And so I'm not ashamed. I'm not saying this because of shame. To me, it was just an evolution of where I'm at today. If you're not ready, you're not ready for that evolution. But once you are ready, that evolution will take place. Listen to your body. Listen to, some people will listen to us and go, that's nonsense. You're not ready. When you are ready, you will hear this, and you will hear it loud and clear, louder than words. That's as Dr. Barnard said. One last question before we go, Dr. Barnard. Thank you so much for indulging us. Who is it that wants? Oh, Jenny. She wants to know if a whole food plant-based diet has a positive effect on bipolar disorder or depression. And I must say that Dr. Barnard is a psychiatrist as well. That's your training.
Yeah. This has been one of really the frontier that we have been wanting to cross for a long time. So Your Body in Balance does have a chapter on mood. And here's what we did. It starts out, we were doing a study with Geico, the car insurance company, because their national headquarters is about 4 blocks from my office. So we went in there because they had 2,500 employees. A lot of them had weight problems and diabetes. So we introduced a plant-based diet to help them lose weight. And week after week, we'd meet with everybody, and they did great. They lost weight. If they had diabetes, it got better. But we also tracked their mood. And for whatever reason, we noticed 2 things in particular. Depression, symptoms of depression eased up. Symptoms of anxiety, same story. Because depression and anxiety actually are interrelated. But the other thing is we just looked at job absenteeism. And we found that people were feeling okay, and they were working. They were able to work as opposed to staying home. So we thought, well, that's curious. So we started looking into the literature. And there have been others who have found that when people are on plant-based diets, you can be studying them for some other reason. I just wanted to get your cholesterol down, but it seems to affect their mood. So we don't know fully why that is, but we suspect that it's partly it's you're healthier, and being healthier makes you feel good. Partly it's in your digestive tract, you have bacteria, the gut microbiome. They are adjusted very rapidly based on the foods that you put in. And so the gut microbiome, these bacteria make compounds that get into the blood, and they can affect the brain. So what we're thinking is, yes, a whole food plant-based diet does help, particularly with unipolar depression. That's a person who's depressed, not necessarily bipolar. I am not aware of it having been tested for bipolar disorder. It would be worth checking out. The last thing though, I want to say on this though, is don't be a hero. Depression can be really a serious thing. So get some professional help and stick with that. And it's good to plug in a healthy diet too at the same time and see how you do. But it's really important to take it seriously.
Yeah, we've had Kelly Brogan in the classroom. Just recently, she was back on the classroom, and that's what she spends her life doing, is getting people off psychotropic medications, pharmaceutical drugs. And one of the things she talks about is taking ownership of the pain in the past and being able to work with that. And so many times we carry this pain in our body, in our healing centers that we call chakras, and they do create some issues. And of course, not one size fits all. That pill may not help that individual. It might have, the side effects might be stronger than the other. So Kelly Brogan was in the classroom not too long ago. Please feel free to watch that and her work as well. Dr. Barnard is always, you know, it seems like there's a lot of people talking about veganism and also whole food, plant-based, that the people that have, because the best defense is offense, right? And so
Right.
if they don't know and understand what you understand and what we're learning about in the classroom, which is the benefits that food have in our body, they're going to bash it. And so one of the myths, Dr. Barnard, and I didn't know it was going to lead into this, but one of the myths is that people who are vegan or people that are whole food, plant-based are chronically depressed and bipolar. Have you ever heard that?
Well, you know,
and they die early.
Well, you could imagine being depressed because people are always asking you annoying questions like, where do you get your protein? You know, and you must like focus.
What do you eat?
It's not to drive anybody crazy. But no, we see the opposite. Researchers have looked specifically at people who follow vegan diets, vegetarian diets, fish type diets, and meaty diets. And for whatever reason, the vegans tend to do the best in all of these studies. But I do want to say that a plant-based diet, sometimes people think of it as an extreme, or that's the end, and I'll see how close I can get to that. I view it differently. I view it as sort of the beginning, that when a person gets the animals off their plate, that's good. But then you can explore other things. How about going organic? Am I sensitive to wheat or something else? Do I want to adjust the diet more? Do I want to do more raw foods? Do I want to start exercising as well? Mm-hmm. And you discover it's not just the diet, it's all kinds of other things. But I also want to say a word for people who still might have a health issue. You know, our bodies are kind of like our cars. You treat it really, really well, but there are times when things go wrong no matter what you've done. So no shame, no guilt. We do the very best we can, and we try to take care of our bodies as well as we possibly can, and that's what this is all about.
Well, thank you, Dr. Barnard. I know that there's probably going to be so many questions. Well, any questions that were asked after this point, I will promise you that I will look for them and put them in our next time. Because Dr. Barnard, you're coming back to discuss Your Body in Balance. Would you like to show your book again? Okay. In February 2020? We can see clearly now. I believe that there is a new awareness, a new awakening, and 2020 is a great time to become aware about, our bodies, how to balance our body. And so thank you so much, Dr. Barnard, for doing everything that you do to hold us to a higher level in awareness. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Lillian. Thanks for getting the word out so brilliantly as you do.
Oh, thank you. And for those of you who have enjoyed this broadcast or the classroom on YouTube or on Facebook Live, help us grow by sharing, inviting, making comments, and liking us, whatever it is that you do. Thank you so much. You can leave a comment below, and I will make sure that the next time that Dr. Barnard is on, or if you have a suggestion, that we will listen, because we listen to each other respectfully in the classroom. So until next time, we'll say goodbye, and thank you so much, Dr. Barnard.
Thank you, Lillian. Looking forward to seeing you next time.
Yes, and thank you guys for watching and making comments. We'll see you soon. I love all the love, but by the way,